What is going on, guys? Welcome back, Commentary Free. I know I say it all the time, but it's a whole new game now. November 12th. Madden will never be the same. Franchise updates coming to Madden. And we're going to focus on the positives here, okay? Because people say I never do that. We're going to go through all the positives, and we're going to try to ignore the fact that it took them from July to get this first series of things done. So with that time frame in mind, we're going to go look through the dev trait, regression tuning, the playoff picture, the player card career stats, the X Factor retirement, and we'll deal with the preview a little bit later. So this is the first part I want to talk about, actually, the dev trait regression. Because the interesting part about this is at the bottom, they say there is going to be 3 new quarterback breakout scenarios that can occur throughout the season, where you would essentially have a player just break out. Now, it's going to be very interesting to see how they handle that, because if done right, that can be a huge thing for replayability, where all of a sudden you've got a quarterback that goes on a hot streak, all of a sudden you've got a player that gets drafted, that gets starting, and then now all of a sudden he's, turning into a legitimate starter, Pro Bowl contender, the things we see all the time. How that gets handled is what's going to be important. Because a lot of times with Madden, it's not so much does the player have that breakout season, it's how does the team manage that player. Are you going to see the drafted or the free agent or however the team acquires the quarterback have this breakout season and then sign that long-term deal and falter, or go to a different team and try to continue there? Nick Foles, Garoppolo, run down the list of those scenarios. Oftentimes, it's not that a player doesn't have a spectacular season, offensively or defensively for that matter. The reality is, a lot of times, it's how the team manages that player that you don't see that impact rookie like a J.J. Watt come in and then spend his whole career with the team. The management aspect is broken, not just the regression tuning. So kind of not going in the order they presented it, but going hand in hand with that is the player card career stats, which again, we've talked about wanting for a long time. They actually say several years, and it's almost to me kind of an embarrassment, really. When you talk about, we've asked them admittedly for years that all we want to see is where a player spent his career. So Tom Brady, the perfect example. He doesn't just go to the Buccaneers and lose everything that he'd worked for. We want to see every season and see how that player's actually built their own legacy, especially when we're team building. So here you see they finally put that in the game where you can go back and kind of have the veteran players respected with multiple seasons and different teams. Love to see it, but again, shouldn't really be years of asking to get it. We also go into some personnel logic improvements. And then aside from that, the commissioner controls, which commissioners, in terms of online franchise, have been disrespected by EA. Didn't I say this was going to be a positive video? But, alas, you just see where we are by their own admission. The commissioners have been just absolutely disrespected by EA for years on years. Obviously, now they get the ability to go in and assign autopilots during the draft, override team settings, undo free agent signings, all these things that really had 1 or 2 people that looked to just ruin a league or did things that nobody agreed with, and then the commissioner had no control over it, and you ruin a league because you're arguing with a friend over a football game that isn't fun because no one has the right control. But regardless, as far as the CPU draft logic, the first-round quarterbacks, we have to see how this goes. But, again, that's so much of what EA gives us, is not just looking at what they're saying they're going to do, but how does it function? X Factor customization. I'm split on this one. I really, truly am. Because to me, when you talk about the X Factors going in, I don't know how highly requested of a community feature it was. I'm glad they brought the functionality over, but when you start carrying things over from other game modes, I don't know how much it impacts franchise as far as team building, especially when you're talking about altering them, removing them, things along those lines. We wanted players to be special and have an impact in a franchise. I personally don't believe that X Factor does that. If you do, then this is, perfect for you. Going into the retirements, again, we weren't told when players retired. It was just they disappeared. So this is now being added to the game. I think it goes back to what we've talked about before. And then finally, the playoff bracket. It is going to take them, I swore this would be a positive video, didn't I? It is going to take them from June until November to have their game align with the NFL playoff system that was implemented before the season. I mean, to be positive, do you say, hey, thankfully they got this done? Or do you question why the only NFL licensed simulation football game takes months after release to incorporate an additional playoff team that as fans we've known about for months on end? It's hard to remain positive when you look at the realistic opportunities EA has to fix this before the game's release or months after the game's release. But then again, let's just be happy we got it, right? That's the underlying tone of so many people in the community. Just be glad that they did this. As if the purchase you made of the game and the commitment they made in July to improve their game wasn't enough. Anyone that speaks with any type of negativity or any type of questioning about what they've done, well, now you just get labeled that you're not appreciative or just play another game. The game is, first of all, not going to get better in this type of staging. I don't know how we're done being positive, by the way. I don't know how someone can be positive about something when they acknowledge this took years. We've got the player retirements squared away, so you're going to know who retires. We've got the players that actually have all their team stats listed now. And we wonder why this game grows at a snail's pace. We wonder why, to many of us, this game regresses. These aren't new things, by the way. They may be projecting them to you today as these are new things we're doing in franchise mode, but retirements and stats, those are things that have been in the game before. The playoff scenario being corrected, I'm sorry. That's something that should be in the game day one. That's not, look at what we did. That's aligning your game with the sport that it replicates. You don't sell us that. That comes by default. That comes by default expectations of, I'm buying the NFL licensed simulation football game. I expect it to replicate the playoff system properly. I don't know how you sell me that or promote to me that you've done it as if it's something good, as if it's an improvement. It's not an improvement. It's an expectation. And every year you lower our expectations, but if we're to the point now with this game where we don't really actually have to hold them to replicating the sport that they have the exclusive agreement to, then we've entered uncharted territories for a bad game. And I thought we were already there with the 0.2 user score, but perhaps not. So the fact that people will sit there today and praise them for re-implementing things into the game after it took them months to get to this point. The second update is coming in January. This, to me, in a time capsule, shows you how bad this game is, how long it's going to take it to get better, and why no matter what they do, you're always going to have someone like me in the community that remembers Madden 05 when we didn't have to ask for these things. Or other people that want to know, hey, why was this taken out? Why are we supposed to be happy you're adding these things back in the game? The only thing objectively you can look at and say that they've put in the game is the regression, and the tuning for how teams draft. I guess if you want to say X factors being moved around, those are really the only things. And I'm sorry, two of those things are fixing something, right? Actually having players that boom or bust, that's supposed to have been in the game for years. Fixing how teams draft quarterbacks in the first round because they all draft them whether they need them or not. Again, that's kind of fixing something. Right? That's taking something that should be correct and tuning it. Tuning to me is fixing. So really the only thing you did is you gave us the ability to modify X factors, which you carried over from another game mode, which, by the way, remind us again, is the reason we've been stuck in this purgatory of a terrible game. Brand new game, though. Reason to buy it. Next-gen consoles dropping today. What has EA done? What have you seen on their Twitter? You know what? We'll talk about that in a separate video. I don't want to be too negative. Appreciate you guys checking this out, and you know I will be back when the patch ruins the game, okay, on Thursday, and none of you can log in. Come back to my channel, and I'll be here to talk about it in the week with more commentary.